All right, welcome to the Two Sons podcast. Happy whatever day it is that I release this, everybody. I just need to just not say that anymore. I don't know. I don't even know why I waste my time with that.
I know. No, it's okay.
Whatever day that I release this.
Hey, we're still figuring things out.
Yeah, we are firmly in the exploratory phase of this podcast.
Right now, it's October, and we're sitting outside because our studio, aka my living room, is in shambles. I have no floor.
It is
in my room.
Mostly chipped up thin set at this point. Yeah,
dude, aren't you cold, by the way?
I'm doing okay. I am cold but tolerably cold.
I'm wearing my Coors.
That sweatshirt is dope. It adds a lot to this show.
This is not a sponsorship.
Just wait till we can actually enjoy a Coors during one of these episodes.
I know. Speaking of which, Coors, if you're looking to sponsor any podcasts, we are very much so willing.
We can sell your brand to a few hundred people.
A few hundred people all at once.
It will be a lucrative endeavor on your part.
And on most accounts, we will be drinking your product if you supply it.
Yeah, that's all we want, actually. Just send us beer.
Send us beer. We'll do anything.
So, the finale of the Rings of Power. Not a whole lot happened in this episode, which was interesting enough, but everything that happened was monumentally important.
Yeah.
Also, before we get started, you guys know the drill. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you guys don't miss any more of our videos, and follow all of our socials. You can find that link in the description to this video. So, we open up with Sauron's evil minions discovering the stranger.
Eminem, as Jason likes to refer to her.
Yeah, Eminem, female Eminem, feminine. Yeah. So Feminem and her two compatriots make a catastrophic mistake by misinterpreting a celestial symbol and chasing down not Sauron, but a little known fact that the Isthar, who are the wizards, basically, and who knows if this is Gandalf or somebody else. Somebody who knows Tolkien can tell us if this is young Gandalf or if this is somebody else. But essentially, the Isthar are considered at the same level of Sauron. They are an entity or a deity that's not quite the one that's above everyone, not quite the can't remember their name either, the 15 sub-gods or whatever they are, and then Morgoth is one of those, and then Sauron and the Isthar are one level below that, and then it goes down to the elves, and there's very firm hierarchy in Tolkien in Tolkien world, but essentially they meet Sauron's equal but good. And if I'm not mistaken, they send...
a way of balancing the force, if you will.
Exactly. And so they send the Valar is what they're called, the 15 sub-gods or whatever. The Valar actually send the Isthar into the world to fight against Sauron. That is their literal purpose. And man, like Gandalf or whoever this other Isthar guy is just obliterates Feminem and her minions. Just rips their... It almost is like he ripped their corporeal presence to shreds.
I know, they turned into skeletons.
Dude, he messed them up.
That was an incredible scene.
Again, really bad misread from Feminem. I wonder if there was a moment where her buddies looked over at her like, "You really screwed up here, man."
Well, it's kind of funny too. Is you don't think the Valar could have prepped the Isthar a little bit more? It's like, hey, you're a good guy. We're gonna send you there. No, they just pretty much gave him amnesia and sent him off.
I know. It's so weird. But clearly,
I'm peril.
Little note there. It's clear that they thought Sauron would be disoriented from getting thrown down, essentially.
Oh, that's true. And I'm sure one of our viewers can let us know, the deets.
The background of that. Yeah. So it does turn out that Halbrand is Sauron, which was predicted by a few people in our comments, and which I think is a little different from the Tolkien works, because I believe in the Tolkien works, Sauron impersonates an elf. To actually persuade the elves. But essentially, there's Celebrimbor, who's the most famous elven smith, is trying to figure out how to make essentially an object that is a representation of the power that's in this mithril.
Yeah.
And they can't do it. They try to pressure, force the metals together.
Explosion.
And it, the pressure, actually explodes the contraption. And then Halbrand comes up with a suggestion, hey, why don't you just use less pressure
Right.
and just let the metals automatically kind of mix with
Kinda
each
marry
other.
each other. Uh-huh.
Exactly, and he specifically mentions it needs to be in the shape of a circle to continue the transfer of energy kind of in an infinite cycle
Right.
around. And he's just kind of like nudging them along. And there's this scene where Galadriel, and we see it in the preview before the episode that kind of reminds you of what happened earlier in the season. But there's a moment where she's talking to Adar, and Adar mentions that he killed Sauron, and maybe he's the one who threw him down. I mean, who knows? But he said that Adar said that Sauron sought to create a power not of the flesh but over the flesh. This like kind of interesting little one-liner, and so she's heard that from Adar from Sauron. And then Celebrimbor says it, and then Galadriel's like, "Where did you hear that?" And then like everyone kind of looks over at Halbrand, and he's like smirking. And there's like this moment where like kind of the sound kind of drowns out, and Galadriel kind of has like a wake up moment where she figures out what it is, which leads to what I thought was the coolest scene in probably this entire season, which was this weird like kind of mental battle of the wills that kind of takes place in this like other kind of like mental realm or whatever, where Galadriel and Sauron are essentially having like a negotiation of how to proceed, and Sauron wants her at his side essentially along the way. It was a really, really interesting scene.
It was really cool how the portrayal of Halbrand had changed very quickly over the course of that episode too, because when we first meet Halbrand, he's very nice. He's a super likable character. You're rooting for him. And then there's a specific moment in time, and I'm not sure exactly when it happens, where you're just like, oh, man, this guy's downright evil. And then from that point on, he almost looks different. Like, I don't know what they did from like a...
It's kind of like sunken eyes and a little bit of like
it's almost like he like darkened or like around his eyes or something like that, because at some point he definitely does not look like friendly Halbrand.
I agree. It's at the end of the day, he accomplished his mission perfectly, because his actual goal, like, he kind of tricks Galadriel into thinking his intentions are with her.
Yeah.
You know, like, this is like, I'm here for, like, I want you to be by my side as we rule peace and all this stuff. And she basically says that doesn't sound like peace. That sounds like ruling. Yeah. You want to rule Middle Earth, essentially. But the whole purpose of him being there is to nudge them towards making the rings. And after their altercation, when Galadriel basically turns him down and says no, Halbrand runs away. And she returns.
Doesn't kill her, which
doesn't kill her.
Is a bad move on his part.
But he again, his ultimate goal is to get them to make the rings.
Oh, true. That's true.
And what I thought was really interesting is she comes back and she goes like, because they were like, hey, they're actually going to make two instead of one because they need to do smaller objects or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And
because they were going to make a crown first.
Yes, that's right. They were going to make a crown and they were going to give it to the king. And so she comes in and she goes, it was one corrupts, two... I can't remember exactly what she said, but she had like this dope line where she was like, one corrupts, two causes conflict or something like that, or two divides. That's what it was. It was like one corrupts, two divides, three is like the magic number where there's, and then Celebrimbor comes in and he's like, it's balance. So balance of power, like checks and balances essentially.
It's like a nice thought.
If any one decided to go rogue, the other two could come together and kind of overpower them. But essentially, the mission is accomplished. They create the rings of power by melting down her brother's little dagger, which was a cool moment. But that's your basically your climactic moment of the episode is you have Galadriel convince them finally to make the rings of power at the behest of Halbrand.
So, do you think each season is going to be like the humans making their rings, the dwarves making their rings? Do you think that's how they're going to break up seasons?
So. Allegedly, there's I think this is planned to go at least 5 seasons. Okay. My hope is that this ends with the great battle on the slopes of Mount Doom. That's my hope, because I think that Amazon is equipped financially to do it. I think that everyone would accept the recastings. I think that all of the characters involved, it should climactically end in that way. So I hope that this is the direction it's heading. But there's so much to get to before that point. But that's kind of, this was supposed to be Bezos's Game of Thrones. And that's what you're getting into here, is there's so many different layers of this story until we actually get to that point. The dwarves have to make rings.
Right.
The men have to make rings. Sauron has to go to Mordor and make himself a ring. Like, there's so much that still has to happen. The Numenor has to sink into the sea. The kingdom of men has to form in Middle Earth. There's just a lot to get to still at this point.
A lot of potentially really good content.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember Galadriel from the original movies?
Yes.
She's very distant.
Super distant.
She's very Jack Sparrow-y. Kind of not
she's
like
a little
eccentric.
creepy. She's creepy.
Exactly. She seems just kind of like nobody's at the helm.
Uh-huh.
When do you think that happens? Because she's very much so at the helm, so to speak.
Carly and I actually joked about that while watching. Like, being immortal, I feel like would turn everybody insane.
Yeah, you're actually probably right.
Because you just would know too much, and you would have too much experience.
There'd
and
be so many traumas that you experience.
Because she really is. There's something just weird about her in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where she's just. It's almost like she's seen too much. She's been around for too long. You know what I mean? Like, Elrond almost has his shit together more in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Oh, for sure.
And there was a moment where Frodo offers Galadriel the ring to basically have her do something with it. Yeah. And then she has this weird moment where she kind of inflates and everything goes dark around her and there's magic that's happening, and she's like, instead of a king there, the Middle Earth would have a queen, one that's not strong but wise and beautiful. Or so. Yeah. She has that weird speech, and it's really creepy because Frodo's just scared, just sitting there. And then finally she calms down, and then she's like, ugh. But that's not going to happen because you're going to do this, Frodo. I'm not taking the ring. So really, do you remember that scene? It's I'll have to send it to you. It was a really, really weird scene. But you're right. I mean, the Galadriel stuff is funky. So on Numenor, the Isildur's sister, who, as we know, is very anti them getting involved in anything.
Right. She doesn't want her
Earth.
bro to go off to war.
She's hanging out with the king to draw a picture.
Right.
And she goes up and wipes his mouth because he's got a little goop drool coming out. And suddenly very similar to the Viserys thing, he wakes up and then immediately is like, I think this is my daughter in this room. We're going to have this intense conversation. Oh, by the way, here's my magic key that opens this magic door, opens it up, and go up there and look through the looking glass. So we can assume that that's one of the Palantir, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's only 3 in Middle Earth. But the Palantir, if I'm not mistaken, are all-seeing stones, but they're also intricately connected to Sauron.
Yeah, they're almost like two-way streets, right? You can see a lot, but then people can see you.
Whoever else has one can see you.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure Sauron or one of his minions has access to one of the Palantirs, so there's some stuff there.
Yeah.
But it just cuts off. We don't actually see what happens there.
Right.
Which is
they
really
don't even show it. They're unveiling it, and then the scene cuts. Mm-hmm. So I assume that you're correct on that.
And there's just, again, lots to get to in the next season. There was a line from the king to Isildur's sister where he specifically says, if Numenor does not return to the old ways, we will cease to exist. And so I wonder if what ends up happening is this political conflict, because the king's dead, right? Mm-hmm. And we had been suspicious that the Queen Regent's wishes to join the battle for Middle Earth would be undercut by political infighting in Numenor. It's very possible that something like that happens, and it ends up actually leading to Numenor sinking into the sea, which would be my guess if I had to come up with something to kind of explain that away.
Yeah, I forget his name, but there's definitely a lot of unfinished business with the
beard,
advisors.
the chunky beard guy.
Yeah, chunky beard guy. What's his role?
I think he was the the prime minister, I think, or something like that. Yeah. I would imagine something similar to what Great Britain does, but except for the royalty still has a good amount of authority in this case.
Yeah.
So the last thing that we have to hit, Nori travels with Istar, the Istar. So I wonder if it ends up being Gandalf, it'll be very similar to Gandalf traveling with Frodo. But yeah, so that was basically where things left off, is the two
Right.
of them following their nose on a journey, very Fellowship of the Ring-esque.
It was very lighthearted and a good way to end an episode. It was a really fun way to end a season. It was very whimsical.
Yeah. What was your thought on the first season of Rings of Power in general over top? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I loved it.
You did?
Yeah. I loved
Mostly
it.
just the orcs, though, right?
I'm such
Just
a fan
kidding.
of orcs. Actually, yeah, the last episode sucked. There's no orcs.
No orcs. Get someone who loves you the way that Luke loves orcs.
Yeah, that comment, by the way, whoever said that was so funny.
Yeah, it was really funny.
But yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's making me so at one point in my life there was a spark of interest that occurred to get me back involved with Star Wars, and that was the Clone Wars. And I feel like that's what this is for me in regards to Lord of the Rings.
If we could just pull that off with Game of Thrones, we'd be in great shape.
Dude, I
especially
don't
since
know.
that's where the show's going.
I know, it's so funny. We call ourselves a Star Wars podcast, so then Game of Thrones episodes do the best. Dude, I'm just not a Game of Thrones man. I'm doing this for you.
I know. You're gonna
I'm
have
doing
to.
this for the gram.
You're doing this for the gains. There will be bigger. Like I think we were talking about this earlier. I think Andor's a little niche, and I think that there will be more like kind of culturally impactful Star Wars content. Like you mentioned, a great point with the Mandalorian is a perfect example of that.
Right. What's real quick? What's going on with Adar? Where does Adar play a role in this?
I don't know. That's going to be really interesting because they almost paint him as like an anti Sauron type of people.
Right.
I would have to, if I had to guess, Adar has like a kinship with the orcs and is very much like deeply passionate and loyal to the orc race.
That's what.
And my guess is that he rescued the orcs from Sauron, and Sauron subjugates the orcs.
I see.
And my guess is Sauron will return, defeat Adar, and subjugate the orcs.
I see.
Sauron overlooks Mordor at the end of the episode. My guess is he travels down into Mordor, kills Adar, subjugates the orcs.
That'll be a really interesting battle, too, because Adar is definitely evil, and then you have these two evil beings, Sauron and Adar, going at it. That'll be a really cool scene, I think.
In general, I really enjoyed this. I think there's an opportunity here to really kind of redo the scale, which they did Peter Jackson did an amazing job with the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. But I think there's a really cool opportunity here to demonstrate that conflict in its entirety all the way through to Isthiolor cutting off Sauron's fingers.
Oh, yeah.
And I hope they go that far.
Yeah.
And not just up to when the rings are created. So that would be my one kind of like footnote. But who knows? And we're going to find out. We're going to be around doing this for a long time. We'll be
absolutely.
We'll be we'll have a little 5-year-old running around at season 5. That'll be wild.
Yeah, things will be different. We'll hopefully have a studio by then.
Exactly.
Which will probably be my garage.
Hey, there's no better place to put it, man.
Right.
We've had some good times in that garage.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, guys, that is all we have for today. As always, we sincerely appreciate your support, and we will see you next Wednesday.
Thanks a lot.